Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doomer Optimism podcast. I am here with two infamous dudes, Jack Murphy and Tucker Max. We're going to talk about this little event that Jack hosted with his Liminal Order. But first, I'll just have them each go and briefly introduce themselves for those who are living in a cave and don't know who they are. Tucker, you go first, and then Jack.
So I'm Tucker Max. I wrote a bunch of books that sold some copies, and now I live on a ranch in Dripping Springs, Texas, and I basically take care of sheep and cows and chickens and my kids. So.
Wholesome. All right, Jack.
Wholesome. Yes. My name is Jack Murphy, author of Democrats Are Deplorable, host of the Jack Murphy Live podcast. And man, who am I? I don't know. I run the Liminal Order, which is a national all men's fraternity focused on brotherhood and sovereignty. And yeah, I do social media all day. And here we are.
Wonderful. Okay, so welcome. Tucker and I are both relative newbies to the homesteading thing, but you are even newer than us. So we're going to interrogate your little event that you held. So if you could first explain to us the homestead rescue, what got you started with this, where did this idea come from, and then we can get into how the event went.
Hold on, wait, actually explain real quick. We know, actually you and I know, but the listener doesn't know. Jack, just like 1 minute or less, what did you and your group do?
What did we do? Well, we got about 25 guys together from all over the country to go to Michigan to help one of our brothers take his formerly rundown, dilapidated, sort of left to decay family farm and take it from one level to the next. They had moved in and they had built a chicken coop. They had some chickens, but they had all this other property across the way. And it was our job and intention to come together, build him a fence for his pasture, build him a fence for a goat enclosure, goat shed, get the goats there, get them up and running. And the dual purpose here was to help foster the brotherhood amongst the guys in the Liminal Order, as well as to teach guys that want to learn more about how does a farm work, how does homesteading work, what is carpentry like, how do you dig a hole? Although that wasn't exactly one that we marketed to everybody, but how to dig a hole, how to run a fence, how to use some power tools you're not familiar with. And so it was an opportunity for guys to come together to build bonds with each other, to create community over producing and creating something useful and valuable, for guys to learn skills to increase their sovereignty, and then for us to help another member in the network increase their sovereignty so that overall the network gets stronger, the bonds get greater, our skills become more advanced, and now we are better equipped to go on to the next one. And we've got a number of guys with farms and homesteads ready. Everybody who has a farm and homestead needs work. So as far as I've understood, and the work is endless and perpetual. And so we've got at least 3 guys lined up for early part of next year and all through 2023. If we can't find something in the South that works, maybe later in the late fall.
All right, cool. All right, now let's go back to Ashley's question. How did this all come together? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, the Liminal Order is an all men's national fraternity, and we come together over 3 values: masculinity, brotherhood, and sovereignty. And for us, masculinity means to build and to create and to produce and to protect and to provide. And we want to do this in a brotherhood. And for us, that means accountability, loyalty, service. And we want to become more sovereign. And for us, that can mean information sovereignty, personal sovereignty, financial sovereignty, food, land, water sovereignty. So anything that we do when we come together, we want to increase our individual sovereignty and our sovereignty as a group. And, we have had online business classes, philosophy classes online, fitness classes online. We've had suits and steaks dinners across the country, where we all get dressed up and take over a steakhouse. We've had brunch events. We've done all kinds of stuff to build community, a variety of different events. We had a jamboree last year in Illinois where we did feats of strength and, barbecued and grilled outside and camped and shot guns and stuff. But this time we wanted to do something that wasn't purely social, wasn't purely recreational, and we wanted to learn at the same time. And one of our brothers, Pastor Joe, he used to be a corporate ad exec, and he would sell media to people, and he would sell, ad campaigns and stuff like that. And after a while, it got to him. City life got to him. He was overweight. He wasn't feeling well. His family felt insecure. He didn't like what he was doing for work. And his in-laws were getting sick, and they had an old farm that was run down. And he decided to sell everything that he had in the city, quit the job, move out to the farm, take over the family farm. He went back to seminary, and now he's a pastor. And he's 100% committed to building out this land and bringing other families onto the property. And we thought, what an ideal circumstance for us to come together with him, because this story of like getting fed up with the urban life and being out of shape and being out of touch with nature, and for him being out of touch with the spiritual life, out of touch with God, and wanting to lead other families out of those same situations and into a productive, reconnection with the land and an increase in his personal sovereignty. It was perfect for us. The story, the opportunity, the land, the brother, and it all just lined up because we wanted to do something constructive and learn. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Going out for steak dinners, awesome, right? Going out and shooting guns, awesome. Going out and having brunch with the wider sort of open public, wonderful. But in my experience, guys just don't bond the same way having tasteful banter at the steakhouse, right? If you do something, if you get sweaty, if you build something, you see it come out of the ground, you learn how to coordinate, you learn how to overcome problems, you learn how to work in teams. And then at the end, there's something right there that's going to hopefully last quite a long time. That fence better last forever. So that's what I'm saying. After all those holes we dug.
So just like another background question, who makes up the Liminal Order? Like, who are the guys who sign up for it? Is it super diverse, or are there like certain things that you can tell that people have in common, or what?
Yeah. Most everybody is 35 to 55, married with kids, professional or advanced degree. A lot of guys, former military, a lot of guys in tech as well. And we also have a bunch of artisan type too. So I joke sometimes we're coders and carpenters. We've got farmers, and we've got guys that, come from Silicon Valley and write code and develop apps and software for a living. But all of us have the same values, generally speaking, yeah. But we've come together for these specific values, and it's all men, and most everybody's family oriented. We've got some guys who are younger, who are sort of aspiring for this, and then we've got some older guys that are retired and want to give back. But the idea was that there's a crisis of masculinity out there. There's a war on masculinity that funnels all the way down into a deep philosophical understanding of the world, trying to reshape the plane of meaning and understanding in the universe away from natural rights, or away from life, property, and protecting yourself, or even away from courage, or even away from just creation and power towards, a plane of identity. So we see that this crisis of masculinity, the attack on masculinity, what are we going to do? We're going to talk about it on Twitter all day? No, let's like get together and embrace these values, and then, live them in our lives, and then hopefully manifest more of them in the people around us. And it's sort of like our way of being the change that, we want to see in response to what we see as sort of the ongoing culture war.
Tucker, do you want to go?
Yeah. So, no, I want to talk about basically what you did is an Amish barn raising, except Definitely. Your own version of it, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's originally why I think, Ashley, I wanted to talk to you about this, is because I can see it. So everything you talked about just now is all true. I get it. But so last night, I live in Hays County, Texas, right? Which is right outside Austin. It's the county. It's the red county right next to the blue county, this Travis County, which is Austin. And we had our second serious citizen group meeting. And it was a huge diverse group of people, from, ex-military colonels down to Mexican maids, to recently people tech guys who just moved out there. It was a crazy diverse group of people. But everyone is looking for exactly what you're talking about in a sense, right? And how did you guys like walk me through? Because I get it, you're in your group, and so it's a little bit easier. But dude, I mean, there's a million things you can do for brotherhood, right? And there's right, you said, yeah, steak dinners, but even if it's building things, like there's a like you guys could go do a, you know, an awesome playground at some, you know, whatever. Like there's a like why homesteading, right? Like, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear what you guys like have, because I think the three of us and a lot of other people are at the tip of a spear that's coming, and like or the front. We're an early wave of a massive set of waves that are coming. I want to hear what you're seeing and feeling that made you kind of lead the charge to pick this, and why you were able to get so many people. Because think about it, man. It's like a lot of these dudes probably get 1 or 2 vacations a year, and they decided to take a week to go dig a hole. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And man, people drove from Washington State. They drove from Texas. They drove from New York, Virginia, Maryland, Ohio.
Michigan, right? It was Michigan?
And it was in Michigan. We had a guy drive 4 days, right?
Yeah.
So for me, man, I've always grown up in the city, right? I've been here for 30 years. And there was a time in my life where I think I took pride in the fact, which sounds dumb in retrospect, where I was like, oh, if there's a problem, I just hire somebody to fix it, right? So like I never, ever got handy. And when the 2020 riots and COVID came around, and I spent a lot of time down in DC covering the riots and seeing what was happening there. Then there were reports of like, you know, people's water getting shut off for like hosting parties in LA during the lockdown stuff. And then it just all kind of came together for me to really give me a sense that like I had nowhere to retreat, right? I'm living in the city. We have a house, but it's just outside the downtown, you know, so we have a teeny small yard. But like I have nowhere to retreat to. And when I say retreat, I don't mean from like an advancing army or whatever, but I just mean to a place where I feel like I am in charge of what's happening in my life. Right? The idea that the water or the power could be shut off, you know, against my will at any time. You know, I know that that's an extreme circumstance, but we saw it happen. That idea, or the fact that there were actually rioters like coming up our little commercial street here, you know, making people get up and like, you know, swear allegiance to Black Lives Matter. And like the rioters spilled out of downtown into a former neighborhood of mine where they went and destroyed like a corner shop that was from a, you know, beloved guy in the neighborhood, and like a Korean immigrant, and they like destroyed his corner store. I don't know why. And all this combined to me, I was like, man, I'm kind of impotent when it comes to like, I can't build anything. I don't know how to fix anything. I don't have anywhere to go. The government definitely seems like it's antagonistic to my worldview at this point in time. And they've got powers that kind of scare me. And it was just, it all kind of came together to give me and a lot of other guys that I know the sense of being out of control or unable to provide like basic security for yourself and for your family. And so it really like kicked off this search for me. Like I've been looking in West Virginia and in Western and Southwestern Virginia, and basically anywhere. Like I subscribe to all these different, you know, real estate listings. I get all these land listings all the time, and I'm just constantly looking. And coincided also with me finding Homestead Rescue. I know, as dumb as this may sound, on like HGTV or whatever, Discovery. And it was just these amazing stories of this guy, you know, going to just fly into these homesteads where these people were struggling, man. Right? Like we saw in the show and in Mike's, you know, talking to people how hard it is. People who didn't have water, people who didn't have a garden, people who didn't have, you know, any livestock, people who didn't have basic carpentry skills, and yet they still took the plunge and like decided to go homestead. And you know, I saw him teaching these people these skills, and I got inspired, and I started doing stuff around the house, things I never thought I could do. You know, it seems funny to say in retrospect, but like I didn't know how to change plumbing fixtures. Like I didn't, you know, I had to buy tools. I had to learn how to do things. And I just started with like building a pitcher's mound with my son. Hey, we learned how to use a circular saw, and then we built a picnic table. And man, I can't tell you how many times I just stand on my back porch and I stare out at that picnic table and I'm like, yo, I built that. It's like, it's so simple, but it created a space for our family where we have memories from sitting around on the picnic table. And we just kept learning. And so that was what started my personal journey towards wanting some safety and some sovereignty, some control over my life, a place to retreat to, like a castle. It doesn't have to be a castle, but you know what I mean? Just like a safe place that's mine, to the extent that that's even possible in the United States, right? With property taxes, federal law and all that. People always say, oh yeah, you get your homestead, but this Ruby Ridge will happen. Okay, sure. Another extreme case, tragedy, of course, but if I can make it better, I can make it better. And talking to my buddy, Joe Norman, he told, he went through a similar experience too, right? Where he's like, I want to do this. I have this urge to do this. I'm preaching localism. I'm preaching this kind of connection to the land. So he did it. And I would be talking to him about it. He's like, man, it's just, you get in touch with these lower vibrations, these slower cycles of life. And, he says it's like spiritual. It's almost psychedelic, like the sense that you get where you just start connecting to something that, operates on rotations around the sun, not like a 2-second scroll through your Twitter feed, and it just hits different. And it gives you a different sense of satisfaction and connection to time and history and other people, and helps you become more sovereign, and I think that you add up all these things. I'm not the only one feeling this way. I'm not the only one interested in becoming more independent, becoming less reliant, more self-reliant, looking for a place to retreat to, but not retreat, but like fortify, just a place where you're in control. Because it really is a scary feeling to think that you're not in control. The food could stop coming to the grocery stores if the truckers decide to stop doing their thing, and the water could get shut off, and the rioters could spill up the street, and your neighbors hate you anyway. Okay, maybe it's time to find 30, 40 acres. I have this dream in my head that I want to have land big enough where I can walk around all day and get lost, but man, that's pretty pricey. So hey, let's go 30, 40 acres. That'll work for me. Hell, even 10. Just enough to be able to build stuff and be self-sustaining to some degree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a peasant farmer here, right? Like, right. I'm not trying to be a sustenance farmer and just scrape off the earth. But I would like, to have the skills to be able to do that in such a need if that arose. And B, like, I'm eating endless supply of tomatoes. Like we started a garden, in our little city garden. And like the tomatoes just keep coming faster than we can eat them. And it's amazing. I just had them today. Like, just being able to expand that, have the eggs, have the milk, maybe raise the cattle that we're gonna eat, throughout the year. Having the skill set possible to make it so if things really, really did go haywire out there in the world, that we really could figure it out. Because right now, if it went totally upside down, I don't know that I could, and I don't like that feeling.
Yeah. Joe. I want to Tucker. I want to ask one thing before you go. Joe's a good friend to the show. Joe Norman, and since I have you, Tucker, we'll do a whole separate episode on this. But do you agree about the psychedelic quality, or like the spiritual, or different vibrations quality of spending time on land or cultivating something?
Without starting that episode right now, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
No qualifications, because there's a million qualifications I could say, but yes, basically yes, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So then you go ahead. Ask your question.
Well, no. So what I was going to say is, Jack, that's kind of how you came to this, right? Mm-hmm. And so walk me through, like, my expectation, or my guess is the other 20 plus dudes who showed up at this event probably had some similar feeling, some similar sort of, okay, I don't know about you, but I have a ranch now, and I know, like, I grew up my grandmother had a huge beef cattle ranch in Kentucky. So like, I grew up understanding that. And then I came out here and like, I had a certain set of expectations. And in some ways it was exactly what I thought. In other ways, I'm like, this is horrible. These sheep are fucking assholes. Like, what is wrong with them? Stop breaking the fence, you assholes. You're gonna die out there. Like, yeah, you're gonna die in here, but at least it's gonna be a few years. A coyote's gonna kill you tomorrow. Get out, you stupid sheep, and whatever. All the million things that go wrong. So, like, how did expectation, like that, you kind of outlined a beautiful expectation. How did that meet with reality? You know, better, worse, different? Like, what are some of the things? And not into like, you don't have to go into the lessons like, oh, we learned we need a power auger to drill a hole because, you know, fence, that's cool, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about more about the emotional, philosophical, spiritual, social aspect. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that it was hard. Like, it was hard. It was hard work. And we're not, we had a general contractor, a member of ours, lined up to come. Like, he helped plan the whole project for months in advance, and he was going to be there and he was going to lead the crew, but he got injured like 3 days beforehand and couldn't come. So we were like, you know, we're not going to just scrap this. So we figured it out. So there was an exceptional amount of figuring it out. And, you know, I think, Tucker, you and I might have talked about this earlier about carpentry. Like, I can sit down and study a philosophy book. I can read some of the most dense things out there, and I can really learn and process and analyze, synthesize. Trying to work with a set of carpentry plans and you know, they just show something and you have to figure something out, and like the right cuts and the angles, like, it hurt my brain. And it really activated a different part of my thinking and my coordination and hand motor skills that I don't activate all the time. So it was hard, and I found it quite challenging. The trial and error approach of just accepting making mistakes, I think, was essential for us. And the first hole that we dug took us like 20 minutes. And then we had to like go back and do it again because it wasn't deep enough. And then we had to go back and do it again because it wasn't wide enough. And then it rained, and then it was half filled up again. So like, we had to dig the same flipping hole like 5 or 10 times. And
many
we had
such cases.
Yeah. So we had this idea that we were going to, there's this many posts. It's going to be like 8 minutes per post. And we have this many men, and we'll be able to knock that shit out in, 2 full work. Yeah. Right.
I love this.
Or, you know, we had this wire fence to stretch out. I'm like, okay, we'll just nail it in here and stretch it to the next one, nail it in, fine. Oh, well, dude, you didn't think about the land like undulating underneath you. And if you have like a rectangle, but the posts are different and the land, then you get wet. Like, so many little things that I just couldn't have anticipated as a first timer and doing a lot of this activity presented like a massive challenge. And, you know, when like I've built businesses, I've run schools and organizations, managed $10, $15 million budgets and stuff. And like, here I am like perplexed at like, what do I do with like a rectangle, 2 posts, and like curvy land? Like, I don't even know what to do. And so there was a ton of this trial and error. And in doing it together with guys that came in with the expectation of learning and being there for the process and the experience and the act of like problem solving together, made it really fantastic environment to make mistakes. And Pastor Joe was wonderful about it too. He's like, whatever, figured it out. And so there wasn't ever a moment where like anybody was like freaking or upset or anything. It was just, all right, well, we're going to try this a little different way. Oh, we got to try this a little different way. And of course we learned finally, and then things really started getting moving. But if we hadn't had that perspective of like, yeah, we're going to make some mistakes here, I could see how it'd be frustrating. You know, I'm kind of a perfectionist in a lot of things that I do, very competitive. I don't like to screw up. I don't like errors. But in this case, it was about coming in with an open mind, humble, like a humble mind and a humble soul and a humble attitude to just try and fail and then keep trying and failing in. And I'll tell you, I learned lessons I will never, ever, ever, ever forget. Because
like what? What were some of the ones from this specific event?
Just very specifically, like, when you're putting up the plywood sheeting, you got to make sure every wall is plumb and square each time you put up each sheet, because you just do that one and that one and that one, and you think it's fine. Then you put up another 2, and then you go to put in the door, and it's not okay. It's not plumb. But guys, we did these other, like the other 2 walls. How could it be not? Well, it wasn't. And so, you learn these lessons, and I'm never, ever going to forget that. And as an absolute total noob with no experience whatsoever, the idea of like, how do you make something level in the field? Like, blows my mind, but we figured it out. We worked all these different ways. We dug the ditch, we put the post in, then we attached each one to the post, but in a little bit different because the land is kind of like this. And okay, then you just chainsaw off the top of them. Okay, so that's how you do it. We're not going to make each individual post level. You put the posts in, then you put the boards on with the level. Okay, chop off the tops. Now you've got it. So that was something, how to set a foundation in the field like that, using just posts and tampers and, putting the dirt in the hole. How to make things a little bit more square and level. When and how and where to move the materials. We're moving around these fence posts that they said were 120 pounds. Like, dude, I'm a pretty strong guy. I lift 120 pounds a lot in the gym very easily. Picking these things up, some of them had to have been way more than that. Struggling.
But it depends though, man. It might be 100. You know as well as I do, 120 pounds sandbag is not at all behaved like 120
No,
pounds.
exactly. The weightlifting weight is totally different.
I'm like, dude, I can pick up 120 pounds one hand, no problem. Why can't I pick up this post that's like 8 feet long? And I'm like, it's like just swinging me all around. Oh, and I did learn another thing about creosote. It is a chemical and it will burn you. Yes. They told me this in advance. I've got burns on my arms. I had some burns on my face from the dust because you're pounding the post in, it's shooting the dust everywhere. Got all in my face, because the first time we're doing it, I'm like, all right, I'm all up there. I'm like, all right, let's make sure we get this right. By the end, when they're pounding the post, I'm like this, so you learn not to forget your tools.
Wait, so you guys did all this without anyone there who kind of knew how to do this specific task?
We had a number of guys who were experienced carpenters in their past, who have built home projects. Lots of guys came with their own tools, but we had no full-time guy who's actually a full-time carpenter. We had no full-time general contractor guy. And we've figured out a lot of it. And most of the guys hadn't done any, 4-foot deep hole digging with a power auger. Which I learned so many lessons with that too, of, how not to hold it, man. You better put your hip into that thing. It's definitely going to kick on you if you hit a rock. What happens? You pull it up and you just dump the dirt back in the hole. God, no, that's stupid. Or you pull it up and you slough the dirt over there. But then when you go to like fill it in, there's no dirt nearby the hole. And you're like, oh man, like after the 10th one, you realize, man, you need all the fill right here. So many different things. Don't slide the post on the ground, knock more dirt back in the hole as you're putting the thing back up. So many things. So I don't want it to sound like we did this with like absolute total neophytes when it came to carpentry. We had some guys who worked in carpentry before, but now they're like coders. Now they're like computer guys. Now they do solar or whatever. And so no full-time construction professionals, definitely not, but enough hobbyists that we were able to have a couple guys really lead the way on the cuts and on the assembly. But we screwed some things up on that too, like the 2x4s didn't get capped in the same direction, and so there's a little bit of a wave here when it really just was so subtle. If you just would have capped them the right way, is that the right word? Crown them. If you would have just crowned them the right way, then it all, just these little details, man.
Dude, it was breathtaking to me the first time I ever tried to lay fence, right? Because you think, how hard can it be to lay fence? Stupid people do this.
Right.
And then I tried it and I'm like, well, I must be a complete retarded moron because I am
this is your second appearance on this podcast, Tucker, and it's the second time you use the R word. R word.
I mean, I'm describing myself though. Yes. Like I literally could not figure out how to correctly lay fence. And this is after watching the YouTube videos too.
Oh yeah.
Eventually I hired it. I swear to God, I hired a team, all Mexicans, barely spoke any English. And like the foreman, I like negotiated, like, I want to, watch you guys and help a little bit. And I think he thought I was trying to get money off. And and like, it was this weird negotiation. And finally I'm like, no, same price. Like I'm trying to learn it. Like he couldn't get it through his head that like the rich white guy would actually want to be in the field with them and learn from them what they're doing. Eventually I just stepped back and watched it for like a couple of hours. And I'm like, oh, well, fuck, that's brilliant. Now And
Yep.
like, I honestly think they thought I was legitimately like handicapped or something because they couldn't figure out why I was out there.
No, if anything, they should have charged you more for teaching you.
Yes.
I know, right? Well, they spoke. I speak broken kitchen Spanish, and they speak like broken field English, and so we could never quite connect on what I was trying to actually do. And so eventually I just watched them. And then eventually I saw, oh man, I kind of saw, I'm like, oh, it's not that hard. You just have to actually learn. You have to know what you're doing. You cannot just walk out there and spitball this. This is like, which you kind of can with carpentry. You can kind of, not woodworking. Like you're not going to make anything good, but you can kind of spitball with carpentry, watch some YouTube videos and put some stuff together that's like, okay. Well, bless his heart. He tried. You can't do that with a fence, man. It didn't stay up.
No, won't stay up. Not in a line. Doesn't work with the earth. The fence is, you can't pull it tight enough. It's super wavy. And in my head, I'm like, I watch these guys on Yellowstone. They do it just like they fix the fence. It takes 2 seconds. They make it look all dexterous and deft. And I'm like, that is not me. Well, I mean, I certainly have. Look, to build things, always wonderful. I believe it feels to me as though this is a wildly undercompensated trade, wildly undercompensated skill, given the value that it returns to people. Paying people hourly to do something like this that takes so much time and energy and effort to understand all the little nuances and details. Of course, these framing guys can come in and throw this house up in a week because they've done it 50 million billion times. You're not paying them for the 20 hours that they're there. You're paying them for like the 5,000 hours it took for them to figure out how to do it in an efficient and somewhat perfect manner, compared to the little mini house that I built in my backyard. That is just absolutely atrocious. There's really no point to it existing. It's just like a dollhouse that we built. It's like 4 feet by 4 feet, but we want to, I know what a king stud is. No, I know what a jack stud is. I know how to frame a door. I know how to frame a window. I figured out roof math, like roof rafter math. That was the first time where I thought, oh, this is complicated. Like I got like a calculator out. I'm using geometry. I'm not really understanding all these cuts and measurements. And, I spent like a whole weekend trying to figure out how to cut one roof rafter from watching YouTube videos and reading carpentry books. But I figured it out. And so when we did it last weekend in Michigan, like I understood what was going on. I knew where they went. We cut the pattern. And these hard fought lessons, Tucker, like, the lessons you learn the hard way are the ones that tend to stick with you the most. In this trial and error process with building something, it's just so plainly there in your face right after you screw it up. And there's so many different ways to screw it up, right? In the connection, the cutting, the assembly of the materials, the order of them, of the operations, just so many ways to screw it up. But, we're hoping that this collective knowledge now distributed among these 25 guys who learned and got better, we can go do this again now somewhere else and do it in a much more efficient way and maybe build something a little bit bigger or build something a little bit better or more of it or whatever. And, I don't know if in 5 years we're just going to be like a traveling barn raising circus. It's possible. But, it was a lot of fun, on top of it. Like a guy like me, I'm in my studio. I'm at my desk. I've got my monitors and all my keyboards and switching this is where I am all day. And it's like it's an effort, and I do it, but it's an effort to get out of the house every day and go for a walk and go for a hike and to work out. So there's a real pleasure in using your body to do this work and to just be completely wiped and exhausted by the end of the day, totally soaked through sweat of all of your clothes, working through the rain, working in the mud, going for a swim in the lake afterwards, being totally absolutely wiped out at 6 o'clock, going to bed at 9:30 without a problem, at all, falling asleep. No insomnia when you work like that outside. That in and of itself is such a testament to where we are as an information age, economy, that a vacation away from your work is to go grind your, your ass off in the sunshine, sweating, lifting heavy shit, getting chemical burns on your face and arms, and like, blood all everywhere. Like I got cut once, so, it was just a flesh wound, but there's a little bit of blood. So like that was a relief, man. It was a vacation in some regards that way.
Do you have some thoughts on I think there's like the manosphere stuff, the one offer that's out there to the crisis of masculinity, I think fundamentally has like a victimhood narrative behind it. And this one is like a responsibility narrative. It's just like, go do something that's difficult, learn some skills. I'm reminded of this, one of my favorite books. It's called Shop Class as Soulcraft. It's by Matthew Crawford. It's like, what you get for your soul from learning these skills, craft skills, even fixing your motorcycle. It was a big homage to Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. Right. But this is a hard message to get across to a lot of guys. I think a lot of people love the victimhood thing.
Yeah.
Misery loves company. So like, how do you convince people to do something difficult and, be interdependent with others and, and care about your family?
You cannot convince someone of anything. All you can do is be the example. And then they either convince themselves or they don't. Right. Which is why I keep asking Jack about his experience or the experience of the people he was with. And not, what do you say to? Not we actually, you and I have
we fight about this all the time. I know.
All the time. I keep trying to, if there's one thing anyone's trying to convince anyone of, is me trying to convince you that you can't convince anyone of anything. Because you really can't. I have never met someone who has a victim mindset where I got them out of it. But I have, and I'm sure Jack does too. And I bet you have the equivalent emails, Ashley. I get email. I could fill 10 books of emails over the course of the last 5 or 10 years of people, mostly dudes, but not always, who said, "Thank you so much. You helped me blank, blank, blank." But I don't know. They're like, your example, whether it was the drinking and hooking up, which was like a freedom, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to be who I want to be, or it was the company stuff, or it was the transition to this. I was an example for them. They related to me, saw me do something that they want to do their version of, and because I did it, they felt either informed, inspired, etc. Right? You never convince anyone.
Similar experience. The number of people that just send these emails, I've never heard of them. We've never really even engaged. I haven't seen them out on Twitter or whatever, and they just send me these 5-paragraph emails just about how they, just doing and talking about things, just inspire them to make change in their own life in the way that they saw fit, and they lost a bunch of weight and moved to the country or got a new job or got married or whatever. And please keep those coming because I love them. And it makes me feel good inside knowing that we're reaching people positively. But the victim mindset people are never really going to change until they have an experience that humbles them in such a way, or get inspired in some other way other than being convinced. It's the show don't tell similar aspect, and I find it also very difficult to compete. And this is a tough job. Right? What we're talking about, this is leading through example and being persuasive by example. It's tough. The fear mongering that's out there and everything, everywhere. Every element of social media seems to be fear driven. All of our normal media, politics, everything, and even the manosphere pickup stuff. It's fear driven. You're going to be alone. You're a loser. You don't have status. You're not cool. How can you confirm your status against the world if you don't do the X, Y, or Z? And that's a tough thing to compete with too, is the fear-based. And it's also tough to spread your message against the fear-based messaging because people get triggered and they share it and they get mad and it just spreads in a much faster and seemingly comprehensive way. And I personally have been part of the fear machine, right? Going out, I wanted to cover the riots. I wanted to be there. Someone needed to be there. I had fun doing it. I also did it because I wanted to raise my profile. And eventually, if nothing bad happened, I was like, damn, dude, nothing bad happened. You know, I found myself wanting bad things to happen. Then I come back on social media, you talk about riots, you talk about COVID, you talk about fear, and people spread it like wildfire. And then you talk about, yeah, me and my boys did a lot of hard work and built something cool. And you know, it just doesn't trigger the same response in people. So that's a psychological, you know, uphill battle to fight. It's a technological one with the algorithm and the shares and all that stuff. That's tough to fight. But I've decided to not participate into the fear mongering much, you know, any longer. And I've got the stats, right? It's so obvious to me what gets better response and what gets better engagement, what spreads my clout, what makes the name bigger, whatever. But I'm like, I'm uninterested in that. And to the extent that I may have felt like an accelerationist in the past, like, yeah, this is bad. It has a conclusion. If we just get to this conclusion faster, it'd be better for everybody, basically. Not saying go out there and do anything, but you could see how a series of events might bring the resolution sooner. I'm totally in the decelerationist camp now. I just want everybody to like slow down, take a deep breath, remember that we're being, you know, fed a fire hose of fear all the time, even from people you think are your friends, even from people you think are your allies online and whatever. Just fear everywhere. So take a step back.
And Joe,
build something.
And Joe Norman makes this point a lot of times. Just it's good. It's a wholesome life, whether or not you're doing it as like running away from something, whether or not you're like doing it to prepare or to be, you know, the sovereignty itself is good, you know, spending time with your family, making things with your hands, like all of this stuff is inherently wholesome. You don't really need an excuse.
And is if you're doing the work, you know, whatever got you in the door there to do it. And, you know, it's not too late to start if you haven't done it before, and you can learn a lot really quickly. I mean, in a couple of years, I've gone from no garden and no carpentry and no plumbing and no handyman skills and no idea of how to read plans and no idea how to build anything to now, if you told me I needed to build like a cabin for me to live in, I could probably do it. It's going to suck, you know, but I could probably do it. Could I build a garden and like feed, you know, get some food out of it? Yeah. Like I can do a lot more things now than I could just a couple of years ago.
I want to hammer this point home because I think a lot of people, in fact, I know myself included, a lot of people don't really believe this. What you just said, I totally agree with in all ways, Jack. They don't believe it. Well, that might work for you, but you're Jack Murphy or you're Tucker Max or you're Ashley Colby. When I got to this ranch, I mean, like very much like Ashley and I went to the same undergrad, right? Like I went to University of Chicago is not a mechanical school. It's not a land grant school. It is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And you know, like then went to law school. I mean, like that, like even though my grandmother had a beef cattle ranch, it's not like I worked it. I was 10 when she sold it, or 11 or something like that. Right. So it's like, I've been around a cow before. That's about it. When I got here, like I literally did not, bro, I had to Google, like I had to look up on YouTube, like how to use, first of all, I had no idea what an impact driver was. Like, what is it? Right. Screwdriver? Like, I don't know. A drill is it? No idea what those were, right?
Why do you need
and then like I had to Google, like, how do I use this? Like literally, like I understand if you pull the trigger, it spins, but that's about it. And so like from that, now I'm building everything in my workshop now, like really good tables, like not something I would quite pay someone. If I was paying someone half of what a regular carpenter charges, I'd be happy with what I was getting, right? Like I'm at that level of carpentry. Right. And so like I did it all off of YouTube, all by myself. Bro, you nailed it. It is insanely humbling and frustrating. Because like I am really good at the things I'm good at. Yeah. And like I'm not even good enough. Like when I was literally like when I had we did a lot of the house here when we first got here. And the contractor, again, a whole Mexican crew, right? And he speaks good English. And so like a lot of things I learned from him. Like I'd be like, hey, can you show me how to, and at first he didn't get it. But then he understood, oh, this dude's actually trying to learn shit, right? Which he thought was cool as hell. And then, but like, I can't tell you how many questions I would ask him. And he looked at me like, he would look at me like, and I swear he thought I was making fun of him.
Right.
But right. It's like, truly, because it's like shit that like he used to bring his like little son who was like 8, like shit his 8-year-old would do.
Yeah, of course. Tucker,
knock out with no problem.
You
And
guys
I'm
are
like,
not going to get the manosphere behind this though, like, because they're going to be so like feel emasculated
No,
to just get
but-
started, but they shouldn't.
Ashley, so fucking what? That's their fault.
Yeah.
I don't care who's behind this or who's not behind this. That's on them.
Yeah.
Right. The reason I'm describing all this and I'm talking about like all my foibles and whatever is so people understand this is the way. There is no other way to get good. I guess that you can like hire a carpentry coach or something, but then I'm not even sure you're going to get that good.
You're still not going to know immediately.
If you are afraid of failure, if you are afraid of these things, which I get, because I just felt like I liked it. Do you think I like just, man, the first carpentry project I did was the most basic thing. It's called a VTAC barrier. It's like a shooting thing, but it's like so simple to build. I screwed the first two up so bad, I just had to cut them up and use them for kindling. It's like, it's impossible to screw this up. I found a way, right?
Somehow.
Like I had to get my GC's kid to show me some basic things on how to use a jigsaw, like a jig, and then I was like, oh, I see what I was doing wrong. The reason I'm talking about all this stuff is because like, one, if you want to do this but are afraid, that's probably your fear. I'm going to look stupid. You are. And Jack looks stupid and I look stupid. And that's just part of it. And in fact, the thing I would tell someone who's thinking that is a huge part of the reason why all three of us are good at what we do is because we are willing to endure that and to keep going through that. Right? Like Ashley, I'm sure there was a time where like you thought canning something was going to the store and paying for a can, right? Like, or whatever. Yeah. And so we all, and I'm good at writing because I kept going through the pain and the stuff. And when I'm good at starting companies because I kept going through, and I'm eventually going to be badass at running ranches and homesteading and all this because I am currently going through the pain and the suffering, and it's not even humiliation, just the frustration, right? That I'm just not good at this. There's no other way. Like people think like, oh, well, how do I get past that? How do I do it without? That is the way. That is the path. You can maybe go fast on the path in certain ways or whatever, but you're still going the path, whether you go 100 miles an hour or 10. There's not you can't take a flight over that unless, again, you just hire people to do all that, which, okay, that's fine. But then the problem comes, I think we are currently living in the very beginning of a world where that is, those resources are not going to be that available, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, it's already really hard to find people to do things.
Oh, I saw a funny video the other day. It was like 5 years ago. We'll get 3 bids and pick the cheapest one. Today, we'll ask for 25 bids and take whoever gives us a response. Yeah. Right. Basically.
Dude, and accept their crappy work.
Right. Exactly. I had to Google how to tell the difference between the driver and the drill like 4 times before I figured it out.
I still don't really, the only thing I can understand is there's a torque difference, which is like a power difference. Bro, I've had people explain Daniel, my car, and he like tried to explain it to me and I'm like, it feels like they're the same. I don't
Right. Why does it come
one more power? This is more power, muy fuerte.
So there was a minute there where you said, oh, you can do this stuff because you're Jack or Ashley or Tucker or whatever. And in my mind, I thought there's nothing about me as Jack Murphy that makes it possible that I can learn carpentry and whatever as like rudimentary as I may have. I'm not trying. I'm taking no claim to learning it for real here. But then I took a step back in my head and I realized you brought it up too. It's the sort of the meta power of being willing and able to try something new and to know that there is a wilderness period and that if you go through that wilderness period, you will come out on the other end with some level of competency, perhaps even mastery. And it just takes going for it. Maybe there's something in my personality that gets, maybe it's like the ADD or something, but like when there's a whole new universe to discover and like go into and figure out, I just get jazzed about that. I want to read I get my hand on everything. I've got DeWalt manuals and carpentry manuals and 40 homestead projects for your backyard and woodlot farming and ruminant farming. And I've been reading and watching so much, just trying to become fluent in the terminology and in the symbols and in the tools and stuff. I remember in college when we learned about a new subject, like, wow, people have really thought about this quite a bit. Whether it was economics or finance or whatever it was, wow, people really thought about this farming and carpentry stuff quite a bit. Like, teach me everything. I want to know. And I think that that's a meta skill that really applies in so many different areas of your life. And if you can just tie it back to the manosphere for a minute, the one hope that I have for people to grow out of that phase is one of the biggest things I got out of the manosphere stuff was like, make yourself the best self that you can be.
Yeah.
Like, go through the process of figuring out what's wrong, taking the steps to overcome it, get your ass in the gym, stop dressing like a slob, stop being afraid to talk to people. Stop putting other people ahead of yourself, not in a, bastard selfish way, but in a way where, like, you have to have a mission, you have to have a goal, you have to have a purpose. And once you do those things, then other people will show up around you that support and share in that mission. So that is the same vibe that carries through all of this stuff. And dare I say, it's a masculine energy, right? I mean, it of just cutting your way through and being able to just push on and recreate. And I mean, it's not exclusively masculine, but if you're going to put actually energy behind it.
I would sum that up. What you're describing, I would sum up as courage, man.
Courage.
Which is not masculine or feminine. Courage is like, if you're talking about the masculine energy of something like that, like, I would focus on responsibility and doing useful things to others, which is important, but that's a different thing. I think all you're talking about is courage.
Courage.
Right? Like, how do I have the courage to take a risk? And the real risk is, what if my view of myself changes? Right? Like, that's what victim mindset at the end of the day really is someone who, why would someone have a victim mindset? Because they're getting a payoff, and the payoff is they don't ever have to change.
Yep.
Nothing is ever their fault or their responsibility, right? And so, like, and it's hard. It is having the courage to come out of that and realizing I'm responsible for my own life, and I have to, if something's going to happen, it's on me, and I might do something and it might fail, right? Having the courage to just face that and get past that is very hard. Like, let's not pretend like, oh, that's easy, you should be. That's hard. It's hard to do. Like, I still struggle with that in certain areas of my life, right?
You can't have courage without fear. I mean, that's like the fundamental element of courage, is taking action in the face of fear. So if you're not afraid, you can't be courageous. And so accepting some level of your fear is the first step in becoming courageous, I imagine, unless, you just blindly rush into it, which is a different way. But
that's not courageous. That's being a berserker. That's subcontracting your courage out somewhere else, right?
Right.
But it gets back to, it's a very important point, Ashley. Like, I have never tried to convince, that's not true. As I matured, I realized I'm not going to try and convince anyone of anything. And like, that's definitely the way I've approached, like, doomer optimism, preparation, all that sort of stuff. It's always from the energy of, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it. And what's crazy is, I swear to God, I have ended up influencing way more people, because it's never for me at least, it's never from the energy of, you need to, you should, you're supposed to, you have to, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't, like, people, I almost weirdly feel like we're going into a period of, like, you've got to really, we're reattaching, consequences are being reattached to beliefs directly. And people are going to have to decide on a core level if they want to, first, if they want to survive or not, and then if they want to actually be sovereign or not, which are, if you look around right now, I mean, it's not obvious that most people want to survive. Like, there's I don't know about you guys. I feel like COVID took a lot of people who just felt like they were ready to go, without getting into the science of it. Like, there were just a lot of the people I know who died from COVID were looking for a way out.
Well, and not just the ones
That's
who
just me.
died, like a lot of the people who just used it as an excuse to never leave their homes.
Right, they're basically dead now. They're just waiting to actually expire, but they're stuck in their homes.
But I do think it's important to draw the distinction, though, because maybe somebody sees the description in themselves, like the death drive versus the life drive. And this is a constant in the doomer optimism thing. It's like, you know, it is easy in some senses to just be a victim, like, you know, just lean into the death drive. I've got nothing, there is no chance for me in life. Everything is conspiring against me, and it's his fault or her fault or their fault or whatever. Doom merchant stuff. Whereas the agency part is a lot harder, you know, making a choice towards life. It takes courage, but it's also like there are moments where it's embarrassing. There's moments where it's hard. You know, it's gonna, you know, really push you beyond what you think you're capable of. But then there's a huge potential on the far side. Like you could blast open a whole different universe. That
you couldn't do.
Yeah.
You do. Like the transition I'm going through right now is learning how to actually embrace and enjoy every part of the process. And I'm pretty good at like, all right, if I dread something, then it's like, okay, this is a place I need to go. I can muster the courage. I can, and I don't mean this arrogantly, but I can always muster the courage to face the things I need, always, right? So the next level for me is, what if I didn't need to muster the courage to face them? What if I understood that this is all part of the process? I embraced it all the same way, which is easy to say, but like, it's not easy. Not easy for me to do.
There is such a zen of Tucker Max emerging. The zen of Tucker, I swear.
It's just that's just basic Buddhist Zen stuff. It's not. I'm just figuring it out. But it's the same thing that's been taught for 5,000 years. Yeah.
Right, you can read it in a book, but now you're figuring it out the hard way, and it hits home. I learned this, and I'm not good at it. And I have an example. I bought a building in 2006, an urban infill project, needed to be tore down, all this stuff. We got a bridge loan to nowhere. The credit markets dried up. We couldn't get financing. The partner originally, we got into a fight. We split up. We couldn't get the right contractors. Went on and on for 5 years before the building was built, it was complete, it was occupied. And I thought through all this drama that was happening and all the setbacks and all the permitting issues and all the soil issues and all these things, that when I saw the restaurant open for business and the office occupied, that I would fall to the ground and cry tears of joy at my accomplishment. And I tell you what, the place it's like it barely even registered when it finally happened. When we finally got to that final goal, it barely registered, because I think each incremental step along the way that you take progress is as rewarding as achieving the final goal itself. And so the wisdom that you're talking about there of accepting and understanding and appreciating that it is that moments of courage, that process, to find joy in that somehow, because that massive payoff doesn't usually, at least it didn't come from me in that example, and in other examples it didn't either. But taking that first step was just rewarding.
I'll give you a really simplistic one. Like, this is so simple, but it hit like every Saturday and Sunday morning with the kids, we always do like a family chore, right? And it's never huge things, but it's like something to take an hour or two, but that the ranch needs. And so last weekend, like I'm in Dripping Springs, so it's fucking rocks everywhere. And even though we've got pretty good grasslands for dripping, there's still tons. The more rocks you pick up, the more grass can grow, et cetera, because we're doing like pretty intensive regenerative ag. And so so we went out in the field with one of those big gorilla carts, those big plastic ones, and we fill it, and it's a big one, fill it with rocks, right? And so the kids are kind of helping and this and that. The kids are good for about it's almost proportional to age. The 8-year-old's good for about an hour. The 5-year-old's good for 45 minutes. The 3-year-old's good for like 20 minutes, maybe, and like 6 rocks. And so we're getting about the 45 minute mark where the 8-year-old's starting to wear off, and we're only half full of rocks. And they one of the trees in the field, they realized they could climb it, and they got all excited. They were climbing it. And so it was like me. And the cart was half full, right? And so it's like, I got to fucking fill the rest of this crap. And like, it was one of those things where this is so small, but for me, it was big. I'm like, not me of even a month or two ago would have gotten angry. And I would have gotten angry at them, and I would have yelled at them to get out of the fucking tree and come pick up these fucking rocks, at least until all I'm asking you is pick up rocks for an hour, blah, 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 you know. And they were having so much fun. And I was like, what if I just enjoyed picking up the rocks and like even forgetting the result of that, right? You can focus on that if you want to talk about what if you just enjoy picking up the rock? And I focused on just picking up the rocks, and it was like, ah, fuck, that fucking asshole 3,000 or whatever years ago was right. Like the Buddha was totally fucking right. And I found such a moment of sweat, and you know, like in Texas, it's 95 degrees at 10 in the morning, and I'm sweating like awful, and like but it was actually really, really enjoyable, right? I found the enjoyment in it. And then it was like, everything was great. And I know it's such a small moment, but that was like a huge leap for me to realize like, what if that's the point?
Yeah.
You know?
But have you developed any skills or tools or reminders to help yourself get back in the moment?
Yeah. You want to know what this is, again, super, super bleeding edge for me. I used to be the type of person who said, like if I got angry or if I whatever, I'd be like, well, I'm working on it. And then eventually I'm like, man, what are you doing? Like whenever I hear someone say I'm working on that, what I know is they don't actually want to do it. They want to be working on it, which is not the same state. So you're going to spend years picking that out correctly in others and then not apply it to yourself. And so I was like, all right, this was like 2.5 weeks ago, man, or something like maybe a month ago at most. I said, I am no longer the type of person who skips over all the moments of life to get to an idealized moment that never happens. I am now the type of person who finds the meaning in the moment. That's it. And yeah, I'm not going to do it all the time because I make mistakes, and I could make mistakes. That's fine. But I decided my identity was going to be different. I was no longer going to be working towards it, and I was going to be it. Even if I wasn't good at it, that was my identity now. And I mean, it was like, I think that was like a day or two before I had that happen. And so it does take practice to get there. But I just decided. I can't tell you how many, it's funny, how many people are like, okay, yeah, but like, what are the steps? I'm like, I don't think you understand. You literally just decide to do it. Yes, you then have to put in the work, but first the decision comes. Yeah. And so that was it for me, man. That was like, and again, not perfect at it, but it's like I've gone from, let's say, doing it 20% of the time to now doing it like 60% of the time with one decision. Nothing else has changed, you know?
That's excellent framing. That's excellent framing, even especially with children too. You know, you're the kind of kid who's tough and gets up and like fights through that kind of stuff, right? Yes. Okay, let's go. Instead of being like, oh my God, are you okay? You're going to be okay. You know, you're the kind of kid that powers through. Right? So what I do is I just start describing in detail the things that are around me. Like, oh, here I am standing in the grass, and the grass is green, and there's a little bit of dew on the grass, and I can smell this in the air, and I can feel the breeze. And then it's that taking the first step. Right? Just taking that first step to coming into the moment and coming into the now, into the present, to be able to block out the fears and to block out the distractions and self-doubt. And why am I angry? Oh, well, I'm standing here in this beautiful field. I'm doing this thing. These are my kids, and they're talking and they're having fun. They're laughing. Oh, listen to the sound. And it helps to be multisensory about it, right? To talk about the smells and talk about the sounds and talk about the feels. And that's been powerful to me. I hope everybody who listens to this understands that when, you know, half the time your favorite like guru guy, and I'm not that, but your favorite guru guy out there, he's talking, all this advice is something that he wants to listen to himself, right? These are him vocalizing his own needs. So I'm talking about what works for me.
So there is a mindset shift too, where in general, when you have like white collar job or you do life how you're supposed to, it's like, it's always later on that you get to enjoy life. or it's like on that short vacation that you get to take, as opposed to like actually leaning into and enjoying I mean, if you're going to have a white collar job, lean into it, do it great, show up every day, love it. Like I remember when I first started, like just in the workforce a little bit before going into a PhD program, and like literally every day everyone would be like, oh God, it's Monday, I can't wait till Friday. Like everybody is, and it's so stupid. It's like the Office Space, you know, or like Fight Club or whatever critique, but it is like, you know, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah. You know, it is one of the iconically correct critiques of not even capitalism, but modern corporatism and consumerism, is that you give of yourself now to get something later.
Yeah,
right? Which I bought into, of course, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's fucking bullshit. That entire, not the idea that, you know, investing now for later, like planting now to harvest later. That idea is not. But the idea that I'm going to give the best years of my life to someone else to make them rich, on the promise that I get to lay on a beach and have some money when I'm nearly dead. Well, that's fucking stupid.
and here's the other thing too, like the beach.
Why would I do that?
A lot of people find that the beach sucks. Like when you're on the beach long enough, what are you going to do? Just like you just turn into a consumer, like psychopath, and just an open mouth to be fed, and you realize like people actually do need meaning, and they need to be striving for something all the time, and it needs to be hard, but they have to care about it. It's like all of those things.
Which is, I honestly think is a huge part of the crisis that's going on now, is an emergent property of that.
Yeah.
Whether you want to talk about wokeism or whatever, all the other shit is an emergent property of a world that is bereft of meaning, of actual meaning.
Yep. I have two things I'm concerned about that I want to talk to you guys about before we go. The sort of like environmental ethic. So I'm thinking about this like potential wave of people getting into homesteading, onto land, into rural areas, buying land and trying their hand at small scale production. The environmental part, you know, like I think listening to you describe it, Jack, like how the land interacts with the fencing, this is exactly it. It's like going into the landscape and understanding how the environment works, but like, you know, regenerative agriculture, this kind of thing, like it's important to understand the ethic behind it. So I'm wondering we could talk about that. And I'm also curious your take, both of you, on like rural communities, because there is like a gentrification thing that's potentially happening. And I'm just wondering what you both, or if you've thought about either of these things.
Both, yes, extensively. Which one first?
Let's do environment first.
I mean, I honestly think so it's funny, like, you know, in the Doomer Optimism group, there's a lot of the extreme climate change people who are like, we've got to cut carbon 90% or we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on the complete other end. Like, I think almost all of that's a bullshit psyop. And I think the vast majority of climate change is due to solar cycles and stuff that's way beyond our control. I think humans we obviously impact the environment. We can pollute the hell out of stuff, of course. That's horrible. But climate change to me seems more like a bunch of godless people searching for a god.
Oh,
than it
yeah.
has anything to do with science.
Yeah, yeah.
And now what's funny though is like, at least not all of them, of course not, because a bunch of the climate change people are really at their core just fucking communists. But like the ones in the Doomer Optimism camp are not. They're local.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so it's funny is like there's a bunch of them on Twitter even who it's like, bro, I disagree with. I think you are fucking mental and captured about climate change, but I'll own a farm next to you.
Yeah,
like,
and
we're
we
gonna
agree.
do all the
And we
same
agree
stuff.
with what to do, right?
Totally, right? And so I actually think the best thing for a true environmentalist, not someone who's looking for a god, but someone who actually cares about the environment, who actually understands that the reason to, at least on a utilitarian level, the reason to care about the environment is because we are part of the environment, and you cannot pollute and destroy this without doing it to us. That is just impossible. And it's one of the great crimes, I think, of the last 50 years that hunters and conservationists are not best friends with leftist environmentalists.
I know.
Because they all at the core at the same goal. And I think for a lot of reasons they didn't line up. I actually think we have an opportunity for all of them, or a huge number of them, to come together, because if you actually want, scratch any farmer or rancher and you find an environmentalist.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I mean, I would make the argument, I would go further than you.
The land
I think
the land.
Yes, I think the indigenous by I mean like old school family farmers and hunters and fishermen are much more practicing real conservation or real regenerative agriculture than 99% of people who call themselves an environmentalist.
Right, the vegans and vegetarians who want to plow forests to grow fucking soy to make a factory. Exactly. No, get out of here, right? All right, so in that regard, I actually think that combination is not going to happen on its own. I think that people at the vanguard have got to tell that story. Yeah, that if you actually care about the environment and the planet, which I very, very, very much do, the way to do that is to begin with your land and where you live, and get that right, and be as in tune with that nature as you can. And if you start there, everything else can kind of will come from that. But if you start worrying about, this person on the other side of the world needs to turn their factory down, you are lost. Yeah. You are totally fucking lost.
Yeah.
I did a tour of Polyface Farms a few years back, and their story there is just incredible. And the pictures and the images I saw of like hard compacted dirt, just fields basically, that they turned into like the richest, luscious pasture land around, that's giving them all this incredible yield. That to me seems like the show don't tell aspect of just get out there and do it. I don't have the particular knowledge to comment really any further on that on the environmental side, except to say that time is long and our data is short when it comes to the environmental stuff. But do it. I agree, though, we should do these things, which probably will have the same result as what other people want. But the issue that you brought up that I did have a comment on, which was the gentrification of the countryside, basically.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon. In the city, at least in DC, there's gentrification is even a thing because there was white flight in the 60s and people left. It kind of went downhill. There was a lot of abandoned buildings, burned out lots and whatever, and then people returned to re-stimulate it. I was thinking about this when I was in Michigan. There's like a brain drain on the countryside, right? Yep. Like if you're a young kid and you want to do something, beyond the town or go have experiences, you go from your little, unincorporated county in Michigan, you go to Ann Arbor, you go to University of Michigan, and then you go travel abroad, and then you get a job in New York. And the people that have that type of motivation, a particular kind, not the only kind, are traveling away. Right. And it's a system that sucks people up and out.
Yeah.
So what would it be like if some of those people returned to that area? I wonder, there can be the gentrification issues in terms of driving up prices on land, driving up prices on equipment, driving up prices at local retail places, driving up prices on other items. But there's benefits that come with that too. And having spent... And I spent I drove like 15,000 miles this summer for baseball and crew regattas for my kids all over the country. And while the land is romantic, there's a lot of elements of rural life that's not super romantic. Mm-hmm. Some of the architecture, some of the town planning, some of the retail opportunities, the low income, low education, high obesity, high average age. West Virginia is a gorgeous, spectacular place, but statistically speaking, they're in the bottom 5 of, fattest and oldest and least educated and poorest and least healthy. And, there's problems. So I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this. I think it's open-ended question.
Yeah.
You have people sucked out that could come back. I don't know.
So here's my question. Why? No one's ever been able to explain to me why gentrification is inherently bad. Because the people say, oh, gentrification is like, okay, well, so what?
Okay, here's two examples I can think of. I'm thinking of my longtime mutual Neil Clark Boyle Towel, who lives in Maine. He's like his family's lived there for like 15 generations. And now it's like a place where city people in the Northeast are fleeing to. And he talks about, he's a carpenter, Finnish carpenter. And he talks about like how his local general store that used to be like for working class guys now has trivia night. And he thinks it's lame. And it's a different cultural shift.
Well,
and
that's obviously a catastrophe because he's upset by some social changes.
Well,
no, we should all shit and go blind for that.
But it does change the net, like the nature of the town, and then there's the pricing thing where prices go up, and then regular people can't pay property taxes, that kind of thing.
Well, it changes and sometimes it can change the very nature of the thing that you move there for in the first place. And I think that is potentially an issue.
Well, that's not an issue. That's an issue for the gentrifiers.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that happened to me in Austin. I moved to Austin for a reason, and then all the Californians came and made it awful, and then I left, right?
Yeah.
So like, which is funny because the people who were originally in Austin will be like, well, the crew that came with me are the ones who ruined it. And then like, it got ruined for,
it's been ruined before you even got there. Yeah.
No, seriously, there's a whole crew of, and I know them too, a bunch of them who left Austin a decade ago. And they're like, yeah, when you and your crew came, that's when we left. And then me and my crew left when the Californians came. But like, I've never understood the inherent problem with it because a lot of people act like, well, it's just prima facie bad. I don't understand why. Individuals may have issues with things that change, but to me, and again, I could be wrong, but like gentrification, what gentrification means is something going from a low value usage to a high value usage. That is not in and of itself a bad thing, right? It's just not.
I personally participated and was an active component of the gentrification of Washington, D.C. from 2001 to 2009. I bought and sold and rehabbed and renovated and expanded a number of properties that were pure gentrification plays, if you want to put it in that those terms where we're banking on things changing, banking things on things getting better, and we were part of that positive change. So I'm certainly not opposed to the idea by any means. I think what people recoil from the idea of gentrification is like going from bad to good, and it imposes some kind of judgment on the people that were there when it was bad.
Right.
And then people who criticize gentrification as a thing also, I believe, fail to just understand the dynamism of the universe that's at play at all times, right? Like nothing is ever static. It's not ever going to be the same. It's always changing in one direction or the other, whether it's perceptible or not, or sudden or not. It's happening. So, I believe in change, and I believe in evolution of things and places and people and such. So, it's going to happen. But I can see why people who live there would be upset if their acreage was now abutted by a bunch of shit that they hate.
Let's get back to your boy Neil's critique. And I don't want to critique a secondhand account of what he said, right?
Right.
But just based on what you said, like it sounds like he has a fucking victim mindset about this shit. If he doesn't
he's gonna.
No, seriously. I get. It's secondhand. So I'm not trying to. It's not really a comment about him. We're just kind of characterizing a view, right, through him.
Yeah.
But so not making it about him. But that I understand that critique is, or that argument is very common, right? Things are changing in a way I don't like. That sounds like a victim mindset to me. Like, if you don't like it, then why don't you and the people around who don't like that do your own thing? Like, why don't you, there's a million things you can do. Start an anti-trivia night, whatever the hell you want to do. Like, there's plenty of ways for that. If your town sat empty or all this abundant land and buildings that were super cheap for years, why didn't you go buy it?
Right.
Why didn't you do that? Like, if you don't like how things are and you aren't willing to change it, then you don't get a say when people come in who are.
Okay, so I agree to some extent, and I've said as much to Neil. So I think it goes both ways, and I'll just put this advice out there for the record for both of you to hear, and you can agree or not agree. But I think both the people who are newcomers to an area need to be respectful and thoughtful about the place that they're moving to. If they're moving to it just because it has a certain quality to it, don't go in and destroy that quality with your own culture that you brought from the cities, and destroy the certain, like Jack said, the thing that you came there for. But also, I've told Neil, like, you need to haze these people in a good way. You need to like make fun of them. You need to get them to be integrated into your culture. In a way, a lot of these people, they want to get into hunting and have small farms and all this stuff. Like there are ways to kind of like, he calls it the council of uncles, but there is a way to like kind of make fun of people in a way where they get the sense of like what the way we do things around here kind of quality. So I'm pro that, I think, when it comes to like local people. I don't know how that resonates with you guys.
I mean, like that's not a policy. That's like, if you want to be that way, be that way. I mean, you can try and haze me if you want. Good luck with that. We'll see how that goes.
But are you respectful, Tucker, of like, let's say the generational Texas rancher who you're relatively newcomer to?
It depends what you mean by respectful, right? That is not what a lot of people would mean there in that regard is, are you doing things the way I want you to do them?
Okay.
Fuck you. Fuck off. I mean, seriously, fuck off.
Yeah, that's
shit.
fair.
Right? No, I'm not. Right? Like, who says it? Michael Malice says this the best. Conservatism is just progressivism driving the speed limit. Right? So someone who's saying that is that the energy of we do things a certain way around here is, I want you to do what I want you to do.
Yeah.
My response to that is always come and take it. Always. Come on then. Come make me do that, because I'm not going to. And I don't think that's a fight you want. Right? Now, that though is a very different thing than how are you impacting, like if I go on someone else's land and take a piss, well, okay, we got a different problem there. Like now it is my problem because I did that, right? But I'll give you a really good example. So I bought this ranch. And like the guy who sold it to me benefited to the tune of many millions of dollars from the gentrification, right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful ranch, but this is a fucking boomer ranch. I mean, like, a St. Augustine grass and all like irrigated and like it's beautiful, but it doesn't produce one fucking ounce of actual sustenance, right? And so now what I'm in the process of turning the whole ranch around and making it an abundant, regenerative homestead.
Yeah.
Right. So Ashley, what if, and I'm not, but what if I was surrounded by a bunch of fucking boomers who are like, oh, well, that's not how we do things. We don't grow things to eat. We just make things look good. Fuck off.
It's fair. Yeah. It's
right.
Fair.
So I don't want to hit that. That's bullshit. That is victim mindset trying to take the moral high ground, and you're not going to do that with me.
Yeah, okay, but Tucker, if you move to a place because, as I did in Uruguay, I moved to this place because these people have like so much knowledge to share, so much ecological knowledge. I like the way, and not everybody.
Because you wanted to join their existing community.
Yeah. Okay,
if you move to a place to join a community and then go in like a bull in a china shop and try and fuck up their community, then yes, you're just an asshole and an idiot. That's not about gentrification. You're just a fool.
Yeah, right.
Like that is an individual thing.
Yeah. And I do think it's a case by case thing too, because like Jack was saying before, there are communities where they're dying for people. They're dying for any positive energy. And then there's other communities that are like pretty well functioning, and then the outsiders are coming in and kind of like taking over. And so it's a case by case basis. I think it's important to say.
There's an argument to be made that going into a place, you should know, is this a place I can change, or is this a place where I need to fit in the broadest sense, right? Whether it's legally, like a homeowner association, et cetera, or socially or economically. I understand that. I have spent quite a bit of time in a lot of areas in rural America, and I can tell you, for the most part, almost every area in rural America is, for the most part, a place you can change, right? There are definitely places where you need to fit in. There are not a lot of them. And for the most part, I think that is why you're seeing a mass exodus of cities. It's not just that cities have become dangerous, extremely dangerous in an age of fragile supply chains and lack of security and state control and all this sort of stuff. Not just cities are dangerous, is that people are tired. A lot of people have finally woken up and realized, oh shit, not only are the adults not in charge, they're sociopaths in charge, and they're trying to make me do a lot of shit I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go over here to this place where, as long as I'm not fucking anyone else's shit up, I can do whatever the hell I want. Right? Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we did. Where I'm in a community of people like that. And I think for the most part, that is how it works when you go to most rural areas, not all. And it does depend on kind of certain other factors. But I'm a big believer in sovereignty. I'm never going to be a person where it's like, well, I want them to do that, so that's what they should do. Goes both ways.
Jack, do you have any other follow-up thoughts on this?
On the conversation in general, yeah. Tucker, you asked me earlier, like, how did I get people to do this with us, right? And it wasn't, look, there was leadership on my part in terms of like emailing the guys, setting the day, planning behind the scenes and whatever. But the real way that it happened was by attracting people with like-minded values. And in this world that we live in with social media and content creation and all that, where we want to connect with people who aren't necessarily next door to us because it's been evident that the values aren't shared, or the process of discovering those shared values is prohibitive or full of risk, right? In my area, you just got to put that signal out there. You got to put that signal out there, or be attracted to other people's signals that talk about your values in the same way, that feel the same way that you do. And when you get together with like-minded people and you have a goal in your own mind, it's, largely going to be the goals of the people that you're with, because you share the same values. And it did not take any motivation for me to like spur 25 guys to drive across the country to get to Michigan. It took like some planning and some logistics and a little bit of leadership to make it happen, as anything does. But they were all intrinsically motivated to participate because they see the benefit for themselves in terms of skill building, bond building, and then potentially us coming around to their place, in a year or 2 years, and getting the benefit of the increased power of the network. So if you have to be kicking people's ass into doing shit, they don't want to. But everybody needs a little bit of help of like greasing the skids in terms of logistics. And it's really about those shared values, I think.
And where do you see this going from here?
Well, we filmed the shit out of it, by the way. So we have got like just hours and hours and hours and hours of footage, drone footage, iPhone footage. We had a film crew there, everything. We're going to put together like a little documentary about what we did and some promo stuff and do a push with social that way. And we want to get that word out because we'd like to attract more people that are interested into this kind of thing. And I see us doing, in the next 12 months, another 3 or 4 of these, and continuing to document them and continuing to get better at the process. And we've got a list of guys in the Liminal Order that have farms and are ready to go, and people who've been doing great work on their own already. And I'd love to get the word out, do some good video work on this, and hopefully it'll continue to build some momentum. I want to do good, be good, feel good, create some more good, build things with my bros, and build the overall strength of our network, because these kind of intentional relationships and intentional communities are the essential for the future. You can no longer make your relationships off of happenstance, geography. You happen to be in my fucking dorm room or whatever. You have to be, and especially at our age, I don't know how old you are, Ashley, but Tucker, man, like making friends, you got to be real about it. You got to do it. You got to put time and energy and effort into it. And, as things get more and more chaotic, that kind of network is going to become even more essential every day.
Last thoughts, Tucker?
No, I'm late for trivia night. Okay. I actually agree with him. Trivia night's a disaster. I don't want to go to trivia night either, man. Like, I want to go shooting.
I mean, he just like makes fun of these guys. He takes pictures of, not takes pictures, but he describes them, you know, they're all drinking microbrews and they have no children, a lot of them, childless millennials. And he's, you know, he's like an old school townie, you know, he's like,
Yeah, I don't know why a
stuff.
childless millennial would want to be in a rural Maine town. That seems.
They're moving there. They're moving there.
Well,
all right. Well,
good for that.
we're all going
I don't know
right now. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, guys. This was lovely. Yeah. Well,
thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it. Tucker, thanks a lot. Good to see you guys.
Of course.